The recent history of Brazil is long and complicated, but shortly it has been full of oligarchy. It can be seen the most in the two states of Minas Gerais and São Paulo, also called the coffee and milk states. It was from here the weak oligarch republics who followed one another got power, but any strong central authority was never established. Instead, authority was applied by the local oligarchs and landowners with their own interests in mind. But after decades of this decentralized chaos, people started to get enough of it, especially in the army where socialist sentiments had started to spread. This led to the Pajama Revolution of 1935, where the 3rd Infantry Regiment seized the capital, and with similar uprisings across the country, the weak government fled to America, where a powerless government in exile was set up. And thus the Brazilian Popular Republic was formed, though its future is still unknown, because the revolution was never really completed. Reactionary oligarchs and regional militias are still a reality in the everyday life of Brazilians. However, the leadership of the Republic is planning to uncover this future by hosting the first Revolutionary Council. But setting it up wasn't easy, and it almost took a whole Congress of itself to debate all the issues of hosting it. In the end, however, it was decided that everyone would be allowed to join it, despite some of the more hardline factions wanting to restrict entry. Regarding security, it was decided that the police, a neutral entity, would be put to use, instead of any militias. Then, finally, the venue will be in an old government building to build legitimacy. And so, the first Revolutionary Council of Brazil was hosted. The delegates spoke for hours on end about the future of our republic, but with a great plurality of opinions, making the atmosphere uncertain, not much was agreed upon. And by the end of the day, the Congress was interrupted by firefights between the police and revolutionary militias, because the oligarchs and anti-communists had influenced the police and launched a counter-revolution, engulfing the country in civil war. After a week of chaos, the front lines had consolidated, with the oligarchic forces having control over the south and the northeast, while the revolutionaries maintained control over the rest of the country, including all resources and most factories. However, with support from most oligarchic militias, the anti-revolutionary provisional government that was formed had the most units, allowing them to start offensively, while the Reds had to stay on the defense. In the north, their offensive went the best, as their cavalry captured several cities and defeated the worker militias in the region. In the south, however, things were harder and the front wasn't moving at all. It was only once the provisional government gave more power to the oligarchs that they organized the successful encirclement operation, destroying the whole southern army of the socialists. This allowed the anti-revolutionary forces to march towards Rio de Janeiro, and with no more socialist forces there to defend it, the capital of Brazil was back into the hands of the oligarchs. And after a while they even began advancing south from the north in order to capture the whole eastern coastline. As there were only a few kilometers left, the socialist government officially surrendered, making the counter-revolution successful. A cabinet of salvation government was quickly formed in order to stabilize the country after the civil war and prepare for a future actual government. However, this interim government was full of oligarchs or highly influenced by them, so the first thing they decided was to form a federation in order to let each oligarch manage their own states. And this massive change, together with the central government not even having control over the whole country yet, led to its complete collapse. All throughout the country, various oligarchs and military leaders began to gain de facto independence, with the ethnic minorities also soon declaring their own ethnic states. There were, for example, the Pan-Slavic Defense Council and Nikkei Burayiru, a Japanese state. But deep in the Amazon forest there was another interesting state that was formed, with the region having been mostly forgotten by everyone except scientists and the locals. Government control was already low. This allowed the scientists to declare the Amazonian scientific territory, engulfing most of the rainforest except those closer to Rio de Janeiro and Manaus, where a socialist commune had been declared. But we weren't only scientists, because to protect our new land, mercenaries were called in. However, conflict erupted almost immediately, with the two groups having a hard time getting along. Because while the scientists seek to explore and keep the Amazon as the incredibly rich and diverse jungle that it is, the mercenaries are only out for gold. So far, the tensions are only noticed in one area, that of indigenous communities. Because our leader Orlando Villas Boas seeks to contact the Vaimiri Atroari, an indigenous group, while the leader of the mercenaries want to keep away since they are known as a dangerous bunch. He managed to persuade Boas, but this backfired for him, because Boas now restricted him from entering their territories to extract rubber money. This greatly angered the majority of the mercenary leaders, who launched an insurrection to seize the territories. However, Carl Gustav von Rosen, one of our mercenary leaders, stayed loyal to Boas, and he successfully and swiftly destroyed the insurrection, making the scientific clique rule supreme. And so we could start working on researching and protecting the Amazon. We started by analyzing and protecting the endangered species of the jungle to keep its massive biodiversity intact. Because biodiversity is incredibly important for various fields of science, for example medical research. So one of the most important things for our government is to keep an eye and monitor the rainforest. However, all our focus wasn't on biodiversity, we also focused on national security, because if our council falls, the rainforest will fall with it. Thus, we started regulating the mercenaries to keep another insurrection out of question. In addition, we did incentivize them to stay loyal by paying those who did with the money of those who didn't. There is, however, a huge problem. We don't have any production of military equipment, since our only industrial activity currently comes from exporting our raw materials. Fortunately, we can bring in the engineers to construct some small factories, including one that will produce guns. And of course, we will try to minimize the ecological damage as much as possible. We will also be able to import any equipment that we can't produce enough of. But we have another problem, manpower. There is simply not enough scientists and mercenaries who are willing to join the fight for us. Fortunately though, Boas has finally been able to reach out to the tribal leaders and conciliated with them. And since they know that we are here to protect their lands and the jungle, they are more than willing to voluntarily join our forces. During this defense build-up, we had started looking outwards, because that's where the threat will be. And after some discussion between the top scientists, it was decided that our goal would be to retake all the Amazon. Because keeping it intact on only our territory is not enough, the rainforest needs to be saved in every single state. And the first state will be that of Manaus, since we already surround it. However, any conflict isn't needed, instead we simply opened negotiations, and after some talks they were willing to join our forces. Next up, we will need to destroy Rondon's liberalism, as he's slowly destroying the rainforest. But first we need to train at least one more division. While we waited, we continued with our scientific and protectionistic work. The most effective thing was that we criminalized deforestation, using our army to surveil our territory for any groups breaking the law. And if they are found to break it, they will be forced to restore the damage they have made. We would also continue with our biodiversity work, going from analysis to preserving the endangered species in the forest. During this time we had recruited the 4th Division, making our army now bigger than 33,000 men. We'd also started equipping our soldiers with biodegradable artillery imported from France. Which means we are ready to save our first major area of the rainforest, starting with that of Rondon's army. Almost immediately after entering their territories, we encircled 2/3 of their forces and made them unable to defend the only major settlement. We would immediately attack it, and by cycling our 4 divisions against their 1, it was eventually exhausted to the point where we could capture the settlement and Rondon, making his army surrender. We would immediately begin implementing all our laws in the area and ensure that its biodiversity can thrive, but our army didn't wait. It immediately continued now against the states of Amapa and Belém in order to reach the Atlantic Sea. They were both far weaker with only 1 division each, allowing us to easily defeat them, but they were also far more important with both having ports who will drive economic activity. After this, the municipality of Cuiba was annexed without any resistance, since it was the last of the small states. What we have left now isn't necessarily part of the important Amazonian regions, but the states still have to be defeated to ensure our long-term survival. And these are the state of Goyas and the Sales clique, who claim all of Brazil. But to defeat them we need to train more troops, and we decided to use our experience in the jungle to create 2 specialized divisions. Once they were deployed, we declared war on Goyas. We would start by trying to advance in the north, but the battle was almost impossible to win, since as fast as one division was defeated, another reinforced. We even lost one province due to the damage inflicted on us during the battle. So we immediately staged a counterattack which was so successful we even reached their territory. Unfortunately, this was later lost as we entered a stalemate. In order to break it, we started buying close air support aircraft from our accelerationist allies in Europe. And this changed everything as we were finally able to break the northern province. Following this win, we retook the province in the south, giving us 3 areas of attack against their capital. So despite our numbers being the same, we won the battle quite easily and could finally get their leaders to surrender. This leaves the Sales clique. So thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.